Hey everybody, this is Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Hope this catches everybody doing well. I'm just going to do, a quick, nice little half-hour episode tonight. Let's start off with some sports. My Michigan Panthers played their final home game today. Man, what a bummer, right? But they gave out a Jake Bates bobblehead, and if you don't know who Jake Bates is, he kicked multiple 60-yarders there last year. I was there at the home opener last year where he kicked a 64-yard field goal. I believe a timeout was called. There was a penalty. I can't remember. And then he kicked it again. I mean, dude did twice in a row. I mean, most kickers would be thankful to even have that happen once, So that was pretty cool. But, they were giving out his bobblehead tonight. Of course, Jake Bates was there. So, you're thinking, okay, hey, this is going to be a great time. Well, bummer. But it was a great season. The Panthers are still going to the USFL Championship. So we'll be rooting them on against the Stallions, and it's a bummer that it's not going to be here in Detroit, even though, that'd been nice, but, they got something going on at Ford Field that day. Kind of a bummer, but maybe next year, right? As far as I'm aware, I haven't heard any rumors about them moving the Panthers from Ford Field this year, for the 2026 season. As far as I know, as I heard, they're expanding the league. But, that was kind of, it was a little bummer. They lost 19-12. They had some really good rushing things, but what I think really kind of set the tone is I believe it was end of the first, beginning of the second quarter. Quarterback dropped the snap, or it was pre-snapped. I couldn't tell. Or not pre-snapped, but, snapped too quick. And, they ended up getting the ball, even though the Roughnecks didn't score on it. It's kind of like a momentum shift, right? And then the Panthers were just never quite able to get that momentum back. And they were moving the ball pretty well, but that was really a big momentum killer. Outside of that, QB, he had a really good day overall. Check out on the YouTube page, though, and TikTok. I did make a nice little neat hype video for it. I kind of liked it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Actually got quite a decent amount of views for me, so I'll live with that. And so that's kind of a bummer. Moving on. Let's talk a little bit about Lions Center Frank Ragnow not reporting to camp. He is reportedly unhappy with his contract. Again, I'm a diehard Lions fan, so that's kind of a bummer. Frank Ragnow is a pretty important piece to that team, but I think he's only, I read $9 million this year, which when you compare it to what Penei Sewell got and some of the other guys that are getting extended around the league, he's pretty on a low end deal. But let's be honest here, Frank Ragnow has been hurt, and he's been playing hurt the last 2 seasons. So you got to find some kind of just like this is called the middle ground. They got to find a middle ground with him to make it work, right? Because he's still very good, one of the better ones. But at the same time, a guy who's he's hurt a lot. I mean, let's just be real. He's hurt a lot. And I get it. Nobody ever wants to be. I'm not encouraging it. Nothing. But everybody's got to be real and honest with each other here. That's the important part. And knowing Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, I think they can get something done. I'd be curious as to know why, with how this administration handles business for the Lions, why they were not able to come to some sort of deal before it got this. So I really, over the next couple of weeks, I'm guessing we'll probably hear more and more about the circumstances surrounding up to this. Were the discussions out there? Did the Lions tell them, hey, you're hurt a lot, this is why we did it? I don't think that they would. Just doesn't seem like it. But again, hey, what goes on behind those closed doors, nobody will ever know. Or at least not concretely. So that's always kind of a bummer. Tesla, the wide receiver that they drafted 3rd round, some of the stuff I've been seeing on him has been pretty good. I've seen a couple of them where his separation isn't always the greatest, but he's got that body control and he's able to haul that in even with a guy on him. So he may not be the separation all the time. On some of the highlights I've seen, obviously I didn't see all the practice, so that's kind of cool. And then I know a lot of people are talking about Terrion Arnold. I think he's going to take a big leap this year. Didn't really see too many highlights on him, but, he did start really making some progression towards the end of the season, right? I know everybody loved Darius Slay. I mean, he's done really great things in Philly. I remember Darius Slay's first season, it wasn't like terrible, but he wasn't the dominating corner he turned out to be, right? First season was in. Second season, he really started to take off, and then it just kept getting better from there. So before we, let's give Terrion Arnold some, recognition. He did get better at the end of the season. Those penalties were coming down. His coverage was getting a little bit better. Plus we got Rakestraw coming back. That's going to be a big help. Even though he was a rookie, he had some good moments too. So, the rookie class from last year should step up. Meek Robertson should be coming back as well. I think he'll do really well. He played, he pretty much, I wouldn't say shut down Justin Jefferson, but he definitely held him in check last year in that final game. He held him in check, which is great. Justin Jefferson was one of the best in the league, if not top two, if not the best, depending on how you want to look at it. So that was huge for him. So that's going to be some big things. Talking about the Detroit Tigers here, they're on another win streak, 5 games. They're rock and roll. So one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, which, hey, they did get better, right? But nobody expected them to get this much better, this quick, right? Probably a lot of Dire fans are going to go, we did, I get it. I'm a diehard Lions fan. So, I was always every year, hey, we're great. But Chris Illich's track record just didn't give you a lot of faith that it was going to happen. AJ Hinch is a great manager, and he's doing phenomenal things. That was probably one of the best things they did. But their talent, it's just kind of like to me, like what the Lions did from, Campbell's first year to his second year. Your talent just takes that leap, right? And it feels like, a lot of these coaches managers around Detroit, right, before these other teams were really starting to pick it up, right? I remember reading a lot of articles. The Wings, I believe the Tigers had Dan Campbell to the clubhouse a couple times. I know Pistons did. Kind of use that, like some of the things that the Lions did, because come on, Dan Campbell got the Lions out of like a 60 some odd year, whatever it was, slump outside of a couple of years during the Barry years. It was just bad. So, he's won 2 division titles in a row, only 2 playoff games. It's more than we won in the last 60 years combined, right? But hey, man, with the kind of talent we have and how good of a coach Dan Campbell is and has exceeded expectations compared to what people thought when he was hired, we should be winning a Super Bowl soon. Jared Goff ain't going to be Jared Goff forever. Most quarterbacks, not all, most start to decline at some point. And you don't want to be stuck in that thing where he's good enough to where you got to pay him top dollar, but he's not good enough to take you as far as he could. That's like quarterback purgatory hell. Just ask the Packers. Aaron Rodgers is one of the most dominant guys in the league for a long time. But once he got to a certain point in the playoffs, it's just the same guy just didn't show up. I get that they didn't have a top receiver, sometimes defense, but Aaron Rodgers would make a lot of mistakes that pretty much any other point in the season he did not make. And that happens the more as you get older as an athlete. Your body breaks down. It's part of the course naturally. Tom Brady even went through it. Granted, he beat Father Time for a long time, but it did catch up to him. So Lions, hey, you got to win one soon. If not, you're going to be stuck in purgatory hell. With Jared Goff, and that's just not something you really want to do. Let's shift gears a little bit. Like I said, the Tigers kind of got, but we'll go back to the Tigers. They've definitely had a good season so far. My son played, I think it was 2 weeks ago. He played 7th inning band in the game, which was kind of neat. I'm real proud of him for that. And the Tigers, they treated him well, and took care of those kids down there. So kudos to them. So just keep doing your thing, Detroit. The Tigers just keep doing it. It's great. I'm not a diehard baseball fan, but I do enjoy catching it, tuning in here and there, I just can't get as glued into it as I do football, but I do love catching it. I love, hey, when somebody's doing, love that. Who don't? Especially if you're a fan of your hometown, it's not a bad thing. All right, let's shift gears here a little bit. Let's talk about Biden's decline. I'm just going to list a couple things off and then I'll dive into it a little bit more. Senator Hawley, I think it's how you say his name. He said that a Secret Service agent told him that Biden was getting lost in his closet at the White House. Now, I don't think there's been any formal investigation on this or anything besides what the senator had said. But I mean, it's possibly believable when you see a lot of the things in the last year and a half, 2 years with Joe Biden. I mean, he really was kind of just out there, right? And, I remember during Trump's first term, because Trump was people viewed him as unhinged, crazy. They were trying to use, I believe it was the 25th Amendment or whatever it was, to use his cabinet to remove him from office. Well, where's that same pressure? I mean, if our president is getting lost in the closet, I mean, we've clearly seen him in that one press conference get lost in, almost off, when ran a place after the White House. It was a speech, and I believe, they were trying to point him one way and he just kept going into the woods or wherever that was right there, So, but just a quick thing. So, they were talking about that, the auto pen scandal. So, I mean, I understand what auto pen is, but if you don't, so auto pen's kind of where they kind of have an auto sign thing, right? Boom, 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 boom. Well, in an executive order, bills, things like that, I don't think it's legal for you to really auto pen. I think it has to actually be signed. So apparently a lot of them are being auto penned. Apparently. I don't know if there's any concrete evidence or not. And if there is, man, that means that the Biden administration hit the people around him. They did him dirty. They did Kamala dirty. That support staff in that White House. If they did that, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that's just doing it wrong. I mean, who are you helping? You're not helping Joe Biden. You're not helping Kamala Harris, because people lose all faith once they realize that. None of us are that dumb. That's just, it's goofy. I mean, and they've talked to Joe Biden sabotage Kamala by not dropping out of the race, things like that. So, I mean, I've heard lots of things, Did Hunter and Jill Biden, were they really running things behind the scenes with Kamala? It would not surprise me. Is that a knock on Joe Biden? No, but I mean, clearly the guy, dementia has been setting in for a while. Hopefully he has good health with the prostate cancer, and I'm not wishing ill on him at all. I'm thinking some people in his circle took full advantage and they didn't do right by him, and that's just kind of wrong. No matter your party, that's just kind of wrong, and those folks should be ashamed of themselves. It kind of goes back to, also in, Kamala was a former prosecutor, I believe, during the Biden administration. Tulsi Gabbard released, I don't know if it was a memo or bill, whatever, that certain things of code, if you oppose the vaccine, things like that, you could be considered a domestic terrorist. I get why a lot of people are like, vaccine or not, this. I can understand the principle behind that, right? But the one thing you can't do is label somebody who doesn't agree with you a terrorist in this country. A terrorist is somebody who destroys things, right? Somebody who doesn't have the same view as you is not a terrorist. I'm sorry, they're just not. I'm not endorsing what anybody does one way or the other, but we have to be able to disagree without going, well, I disagree with you, so I'm going to put you in jail. Just, it's a slippery slope, and that's just something they would do in one of those, one of the old style authoritarian regimes in Europe back in the day. We're better than that here. We need to hold our politicians to a higher standard. It's not okay. So, I mean, and honestly, it's believable. I mean, look what Mark Zuckerberg said. The Biden administration pretty much threatened, they shook him down and said, hey, you either block certain people who oppose this stuff or we're coming after you. I mean, look at when Elon Musk bought Twitter, now X. They released some files from there. Same thing. They were using the social media platforms to pressure you to make you think a certain way about COVID. It wasn't about anything, whether you believe or not. It wasn't about the facts. It wasn't about anything. It was literally about you doing as they say. You believing everything that they're telling you is biblical. That is dangerous. Dangerous. Whether you're a Trump supporter, Biden supporter, Kamala, that's dangerous. You need to be able to disagree with your leaders. And your leader's got to be able to handle you disagreeing with them. It's fundamental to life, to a company, to a government, everything functioning. So some of these things, I mean, it's, Biden's not the first administration. It's happened. And, all you got to do is look at some things Edward Snowden's released, with Obama and Bush and them, things like that. There was a lot of crazy stuff there. But, it's, obviously we didn't know what went on during the Spanish flu pandemic. And, I mean, we did know, right, about the mask things, but, we didn't know as much detail about the inner workings. So the fact that happened is just, and those things were, and so many people were okay with it. If Donald Trump sneezed wrong like that, man, that'd be on every news station, including Fox News, who seems to support him more often than not. It would be on repeat all day long because it would be controversy to make you buy. I don't like that. That's not my giddy up, right? So it's kind of a bummer that we went down that road. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we're better than that as a country. It's very disappointing, some things that's coming out about the Biden administration. Love or hate Joe Biden. I don't think he was that president, that mindset when he ran the first time, right? He was a lot sharper, paid attention a lot better. Not that he didn't necessarily pay attention, just the span was gone, right? And I think that people close to him put him in a bad position. It's my opinion. Could be wrong. Do I tend to lean to the right? Yes, I do, but I'm not so far to the right or so far one way where I can't sit there and disagree with something Donald Trump says or does. I don't agree with everything he does. I don't. Not at all. Do I agree with a lot of things he does in principle? To a point, yeah. There is some things that I agree with Joe Biden did. I thought that, I didn't agree with how he went about the student, loan reform. I think one of the number one ways you could really help people is stop like whether you believe that we shouldn't forgive the loans, we should. Here's one way to make college more affordable if you don't believe in free loans or you want people to pay it back and people don't have to worry about that as much in the future. We should not be charging students a higher interest rate than we charge banks for overnight lending rates by the Fed. We're ripping our own citizens off. That's shameful. You take that, you remove that, you're going to start making college more affordable for everybody that has to take a loan out. That's going to put tons of money back in the American people's pockets. They'll be able to pay for the college that you're saying that they should be paying for and not get a free ride or however you want to view it. When they do go back to repay once they graduate college, there's going to be less in there, right? And even if you believe there should be an interest rate on it, that's fine. But Chase Bank should not be getting a better deal than the American taxpayer. The American taxpayer borrowing American taxpayer money to go to school to produce for this nation that helps increase our GDP and helps keep us on a more competitive scale around the world. That's just goofy. We're literally the only country that I know of that's a major country that is willing to take that risk. It's a risk. We have, a lot of people out there, good potential to be engineers, doctors, whatever. So come on, let's do better. So that's just kind of goofy there to me, but is what it is. But I did agree with what he was trying to do in principle. I think it was a great thing. He was tackling a crisis. Everybody's like, oh, you should repay what you borrowed, this, that, and the other thing. I can get behind all that to a degree. But the one thing I felt that they didn't address was the fact that we give banks a better deal than we give our own citizens to go to school, to be more educated, to work at places like those banks, to make a better company, to make America more competitive around the world, to make our capitalist society more productive. And, people these days tend to be a little bit more ethically focused and workers' rights, right? So if they're more educated with things like that, they're going to find more ways and new ways to make that stuff work, right? To make it work, to make more productive, to increase your, standard of living. So why are we trying to railroad them? Charging them more than you're charging some of the wealthiest banks in the world makes 0 sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. None to me. I'm sure there's going to be 5 million people going to be like, well, this, that. There's just certain things, I think we can do a better job on. That's one of them. So let's kind of skip over to one of my favorite subjects, I guess, if you want to call it that. Skittles is now removing, kind of going back to the food dyes, things like that. Skittles is now removing titanium dye from Skittles, and I'm kind of going, hold on, let me. Okay, so the titanium dioxide that's in the Skittles that they're removing. This is from the New Jersey government health site. Exposure can irritate the eyes, nose, and throat since it has been shown to cause lung cancer in animals. A carcinogen. Such substances also have the potential for causing reproductive damage in humans. And we were letting this go in our food. And I know there's people, well, if it's processed this way, that way, a duck's a duck. They knowingly let people put, now, should we all as citizens done our homework and done better? Yes, we should have. But at the same time, the whole purpose of these agencies is to help with things like that, right? Because our world is not as simple as it was 70 years ago where you didn't have 5,000 things going on. Bigger, like the titanium dioxide, it's crazy. It says that, a cancer-causing thing. But RFK's the nutso? The weirdo? I get him swimming that river, but it's kind of weird. But come on, everybody does something weird. Name one of you that don't. Guaranteed behind closed doors, you do something weird. Pick your nose, eat it. I don't know, but I promise you, everybody does something weird behind closed doors. Promise. But anyway, getting back to the subject at hand, it's used as a color additive in foods. Titanium dioxide is a synthetically produced white pigment manufactured from naturally occurring ores. It is regulated by the FDA as a colored additive and used in a variety of FDA-regulated foods, such as bakery products and candy. Now, here's the thing. From Healthline, foods with titanium dioxide are typically candies, pastries, chewing gum, coffee creamers, chocolates, and cake decorations. Although there are some safety concerns, the FDA generally recognizes titanium dioxide as safe. Think about that. There's safety concerns with something that can cause lung cancer, possibly. Now, again, that's probably more so in like the purest form, but it's there. It's there enough to where they have to be cautious. Makes no sense. And it makes no sense that RFK why is it voluntary that they're getting rid of it? It should be mandatory. These dyes should not be voluntarily removed because that means somebody can come along, repurpose the chemical, redevelop the structure of it, and somehow go, oh, look, it's not this. And then they're going to slip it right back in. They're going to put that stuff right back in the food as soon as you're gone. It needs to be a ban on those products. I'm sorry, it just does. Some of these things that are coming out, I should have paid attention to more my whole life, but now it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And just like everybody wigging out, kind of going with that, RFK and the FDA, CDC, or not FDA, but CDC removed COVID vaccine recommendation for healthy pregnant women and healthy children. Because they're saying it increased heart things. Now there's some people out there saying, hey, there's not as much, but he's also said that, they're not saying you can't get it. What they're saying is should not be part of the recommended schedule for people like that. You can still make your own choice. If you and your doctor feel it's the best choice for you, go for it. Just like I've said before, everybody says, RFK is going, ooh, why is he in charge of this if you don't want to take medical advice from him? Well, because here's the thing. All of our situations can be different. Genetics change from person to person. A lot of these things that's why they're called recommendations. You take this information, you go sit with your doctor and you go, hey, what works best for me? That's how it's supposed to work. Not some person sitting in Washington, D.C. deciding your life. Think for yourself. It's okay. You'll probably do better off, and you'll find that you'll do better off. I did take the first 2 COVID vaccines. No, I did not get any boosters after that. I'm not knocking anybody who did. I know a lot of friends who did, family who did, and I do not knock them one bit. That's good for them, and it really helps them out. If that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. But I am definitely for it not being mandatory. That's just the thing. Everybody should hopefully remember, I do have a son that is considered autistic, right? Now, again, I'm not against Western medicine. I'm not against things like that. He was taking a drug called Risperdone, I'm sorry. Um, and it was doing good, but then he started having some little things, with the autism with him. And, we've kind of found that maybe it's not as much based on the medication. It was more of when certain things changed for him. Like now he's become a little bit more social. Like now he's trying to make friends a little bit, where that's just kind of like, he's still learning the whole speech thing a little bit. So it's kind of like this weird dynamic, but, it's helping him. But we've noticed in certain things like that happen when he has like these like world changes, X out a little bit. He's swatted at his pair a little bit. He's never like tried to physically hurt her. He's, doesn't do it very often. I'm not condoning it whatsoever. Okay. I correct him every time. I know certain things are kind of just more of a reaction for him, but I still think it's important that I reinforce, hey, this is not something you should be doing. It's not. And I try to stress that to him. But they wanted to try him on Prozac, and and I brought my concern up, but I'm willing to give everything a try. I had looked it up, and in some situations, Prozac can have up to a 25% increase in aggression in kids with autism, and Henry was on it for about 3-4 days, and we definitely noticed. But there's a lot of kids I've looked out there that have had great responses to it, so I'm not saying one way or the other. I am saying that sometimes them warnings are there for a reason. And nobody's going to know if that's going to happen to your kid or not. I mean, maybe you have an intuition, maybe you do know. I don't know. But I can just tell you that that was not the case with my son. I was willing to try, because if that would help him, why not? I mean, if it helps him function better, right? Some that I did, hear about, I haven't gotten, I'm still trying to figure it out, is I know they're using in Germany stem cell therapy to help repair the brain in the areas that seem to be affected by autism. I don't know the super details about it. There's really not much going in the United States about that. Stem cell therapy has been a very touchy subject here. But they're trying to help these kids with autism get their brains to think normally without permanent drugs all the time. That's a terrific thing. Very, very terrific thing. Wrapping it all up. Hey, thanks for listening to it. Again, hey, I love my son to death. I'm very passionate about, I've always said that if a doctor gives you a diagnosis, right, they can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but if you give me a diagnosis, you'd be able to give me a generalization of something. Because if not, how are you diagnosing me? Just an opinion. I'm sure there's facts out there, but it's just what my heart and what my gut tells me. Like, if you're diagnosing me with something, you should be able to give me some kind of generalization of, hey, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. When he got diagnosed medically, it was, he is autistic. There's a lot of behaviors there to a point. I just did not like the process of it. I did not like the process of how they would determine it. It was just not something I was completely comfortable with. But, it is what it is. He does have very good doctors around him. People that care about him. The school, they do a great job with him. I mean, they do a great job with him. They have helped him grow so much. And I think everybody at that school, that they do a great job with him. He wouldn't be making the advancements he is without them. And it's very hard sometimes. I mean, he's generally a pretty well-behaved child and not super far on the spectrum in terms of bad behavior and things like that. And I know a lot of people that do go through that stuff, and it's just not fun. So I'm very thankful. And I appreciate all the people at that school, and shout out to my wife who does a lot of the legwork for it. You're a trooper and you're a star. And our family appreciates and loves you. Wouldn't be possible without you. So that wraps it up. I hope everybody has a good night, good day, whatever you want to call it. We got a great week coming up. Hopefully at the end of this week, we will have a very special guest. Stay tuned. We will be talking about that as we go throughout the week. I will drop some quick episodes. So I look forward to talking to y'all then. Have a good night.